we are now going to look at one very important topic, Brand Africa. And to help set the tone for the discussion this morning, I have a short presentation just to give the foretaste once again to the debate that we will be going through. We've heard the Secretary General mention in his opening remarks that Brand Africa, there's a lot of stereotypes and negatives about our region, and it's all due to negative perception. And we have to address these issues by promoting proactive and positive images of the continent, providing accurate information on matters of interest and issues arising on the continent, whilst ensuring that we are giving exact geographical reference, providing concrete statistics in order to dispel the misperception affecting the image of Africa. This subject, you would agree with me, echoes a series of requests from yourselves, the member states, in addressing more in depth and to develop mechanisms to support the shape of a regional branding in line with current economic and communication challenges. There is a need to have a more proactive leadership of the African narrative and a need to remove the barriers, the perceived barriers to development throughout Africa, using tourism to drive this change. As the Secretary General also mentioned, we have started exploring an initial work towards the publication of a report encompassing issues and opportunities at stake on the subject. By liaising with the national tourism boards in collaboration with Casa Africa, we have initiated this report, which would become a live document. As we know, this topic is ever-changing. We are also suggesting some concrete actions to be undertaken, be it through the training of destination management organizations in African countries on branding and communications as a nation, but also as a region. We are also suggesting to organize annual meetings of CEOs of national tourism boards from all over Africa to embed cooperative management of the African narrative. And with this, I just want to give an idea of what, as you can see on the screen, there is a map that is showing an example of the worldwide misjudgment of the true size of Africa. And as you can see, in the continent, we can fit the whole of Europe, including the United States as well as China. So again, it's depicting the misjudgment and perception about our continent on the size of it. And we just put together a few of the different logos, brands that we have of some countries around our region, also to show the collective and individual strength that we have in terms of identity. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, I will stop here because I'm sure our very experienced panelists will have a lot more to share with us this morning on this very topic on Brand Africa. I will now introduce our moderator for the next session. He is widely regarded as the foremost global African branding authority, author, and advisor. He has been named one of the 100 most influential Africans by New Magazine. He's worked with over 100 diverse brands across every region in Africa. He is the founder of Brand Leadership, an award-winning advisory firm, Brand Africa 100, Africa Best Brands, and the most referenced research and ranking of brands in Africa, and Public Sector Excellence, an initiative to research and to recognize service excellence in the public sector. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Thebe Ikalafeng, who will introduce his panelists for today's discussion.
I just realized we don't have microphones. I just realized we don't have microphones. Good morning, Africa. Well, if you're in this room, you're an African. If you care about Africa, you're an African. So I just want to sort the technical parts out of the way, then we get started. Will you also have the other panelists? Thank you. Thank you. It's all right? Can you hear the back? Maybe I'll tell you what I'll do as we are setting up the other panelists. Maybe just expand on the context a little bit. What an interesting start to the year. You know, whenever people read about our continent, what do they read about? They read about the war, they read about the famine, they read about the hunger, they read about the strifes and all those. And whenever they reflect on our continent, they say what? What a shithole. And I look at it and say, what kind of a shithole is this? A shithole that is growing at 8% in tourism compared to the global average of 7%. A shithole that has got the most optimistic people in the world. That's the kind of shithole I want to be in. I want to be in a kind of place where 70% of the people are under the age of 30, which speaks to optimism, which speaks to youth, which speaks to new idea and new thinking. That's the kind of continent I want to be a part of. I want to be in a continent where a footballer can become the only man to have won Footballer of the Year in Europe, Footballer of the Year in Africa, and become a president of a country in Liberia. I want to be in a continent where the only street in the world that has produced 2 Nobel Peace Prize winners, Desmond Tutu and Mandela, is in Africa. So we live in an exciting continent. As soon as all the rest of the panelists are ready, I will ensure that we get going on the program. First up on who's going to join me on the panel is Dr. Adam Wu. And Dr. Adam Wu is the Chief Operating Officer of the China Business Network Africa. So we're looking forward to engaging with him when we talk about China, which is certainly the most invested country in Africa. Welcome, Dr. Wu. Next, Kwakye Donkor, who is the Chief Executive of Africa Tourism Partners. He's also the former Chief Marketing Officer of Retosa. Welcome, Kwakye. Next up is Pascal Belda, who is the publisher, the founder and president of World Investment News, the CEO of eBiz Africa Review. You've got it on your cover. You've got it on your chairs. And it's a delight and pleasure to introduce the Honorable Minister, Najib Balala, who is the only minister. Now, you know, people talk about the continent and they say one president comes with a whole new people, another one comes with a whole people. Honorable Najib has been in cabinet for 15 years under different presidents. Welcome, So whenever people talk about branding, they say, what is a brand? Because I think maybe they will give us a bit of further context as we talk about this to shape this. They say, what is a brand? I don't like any of the stuff that they teach us in universities. Because the only thing that we have to remember what a brand is. A brand is a person's gut feeling about a place, about the people. It is not what you say it is what they say it is. So perceptions are very important in terms of what people think about a brand. And why should we care as Africans? We should care as Africans because nations compete on brands. Nations compete on brands, and the brand is important because they are competing in terms of the share of the wallet. Where can many people go? And I want to explore that a bit. I think I saw the Minister of Uganda in the audience yesterday. I hope he's around. We're quite keen to hear his thoughts versus the Minister of Kenya in terms of because Uganda being the number one investment tourism market in tourism people in Kenya. So we're quite keen. So the second thing that is important to remember is that whether you like it or whether you don't like it, people are going to form opinions about your country. So it is up to you how you change that narrative for your positive, how you change the narrative for your benefit. Now, every year I publish the top 100 most admired brands in Africa. I've done with African business for the last 5 years. Now, here's the challenge. Only 17% of the brands that Africans admire are African. So now you can see the challenge, that it begins with us. Africans, let's get the show on the road. So I think I must start outside. I think I must start outside of the continent first, because, you know, perceptions are generally held outside. Now, I was quite struck, Dr. Wu, when I looked at the statistics for China, that the top 10 markets where Chinese go to visit is not in Africa. But yet, when you look at the top 10 investors in Africa, China is top of the list. Where are we going wrong? Why are you not visiting us?
Well,
what are you doing with the money that you're making from Africa? You should be coming to invest. You should come to invest it in Africa, right?
Yeah. I thought you said this is not meant to be political. Yeah.
Oh, that's not political.
All right. Now, actually, just answer your question. Now, China is the #1 country investing in Africa. I hope that African friends recognize that. Because you rightly, point out that the president of our USA has a complete different opinion of Africa, as we, Chinese, do. We love Africa, I must say, because my mother-in-law was one of those that was volunteer on the Tanzania-Zambia railway that we built years ago now, 1950s, 60s. Now we are rebuilding new highways, new speed links that from Djibouti and so on. We are investing heavily in Africa. Of course, may not yet be all in the tourism sector. When he's free, I will give him the reason. But I'll give you the good news is we have been investing in projects that you may not be aware that West African Airlines is investing by Hainan Airlines together with the China African Development Funds. Now, if we started to invest in airlines, it's just indicating that we have recognized the tremendous potential of the African continent in tourism development. Now, I answer your question, say, how come this disparity between investing in the country, in the continent that we are the #1 investors in Africa, but not yet visiting to such extent, just because not many of the countries, including those from Africa, that are presenting the projects in the tourism sector. Now, earlier on, Ms. Guangku did say that there are 60 or so projects that's from 19 countries from Africa, just here. But there's over 40 countries, so not even every country presented projects. Now, a few of you have come up to China for that. Luckily, we have had other countries like Morocco recently. We brought their tourism development authorities. They have a separate authority parallel to the tourism promotion authority to promote investments in tourism sector. It was very successful roadshow we organized from Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing. I know we have Chinese investors, companies, large companies, similar to Hainan. Hainan itself is interested in the aviation sector. That is important for the tourism. Tourism, we are not just looking at hotels, resorts. Yes, we are, because Xinjiang Group is one of those that are looking at those, already have the properties. Those who, whichever country had the golden tulip and so on, you will know that those are already invested by Xinjiang Group from China, because they bought the entire Louvre group of 46 hotels that many are in Africa. So yes, so the fact that we are investing, but we would love to have more of you responsible for tourism development to present your project to China. I certainly applaud what Secretary General said, that Minister Balala initiated twice or second time in the year of Investour. Now, when it's in Spain, unfortunately, not many Chinese could come here. They don't see the relevance. But if it's in Africa, we can put our hands up. We will be helping. If you open up, say, look, you want to have Chinese investors, we can bring the Chinese companies coming to you, to Africa.
Yes.
All right.
In fact, I take the opportunity to invite.
2 minutes. You know this, I think we must call it old age. I'm looking at my list and I'm looking as you have on your program. I've invited everybody, and my sincere apologies. I have not invited His Excellency, the Minister of Tourism from Côte d'Ivoire. That is my absolute mistake, and we apologize. I would love the Minister to please join us, and it is my mistake, and it's not in the program. The name is in the program. Minister, would be an honor to have you on the program. It is my mistake, so we apologize for that. I don't know why I would make a mistake like that when Côte d'Ivoire is one of the most amazing places I've been to. When I went to the Basilica, I was incredibly inspired by certainly the most beautiful basilica in the world, and that just happens to be in Africa and to be in Côte d'Ivoire in Yamoussoukro. Welcome, Minister. It is my apologies, and thank you for joining us. Minister,
Yes, Thebe,
Najib, you are going to respond to, I imagine you're going to contribute to why is China not visiting Africa?
Well, first I take the opportunity to thank UNWTO for inviting me to be in this panel, and also to congratulate Zorab for being the new Secretary General of UNWTO. But today on Brand Africa, on the subject that we wanted to attract more or change the narrative of the African continent, I think it's very important that we start doing it ourselves. We don't allow others to have the perception on us. We start to give the narrative ourselves. And I agree with the colleague and our Secretary General that we do Investour in Spain, Madrid, as well as annually we have events in Africa. And we in Kenya are in the forefront. On the 2nd to the 4th of October, we are having a Africa Hotel Investment Forum in Nairobi. So we are all inviting you, and we want you. And we bring the investors from all over the world, the Kempinskis, the Movenpicks, the JW Marriotts, all the international chain of brands into Africa, not only to invest into Kenya, but also to come and see, as an example, what has Kenya done, and what can Africa offer. And I agree with Thebe here, that yes, this is a continent that has an 8% economic growth, not only in tourism growth, but also economically. Kenya has a 6% economic growth. We have established a railway line with support of China again, a fast train from Mombasa to Nairobi, and we want to connect it to Uganda and Rwanda so that we can be able to get our regional market at the same time. We want to develop infrastructure. We have developed infrastructure in Kenya. We also in Kenya have made the announcement from 1st of January this year that all Africans can get their visas online, but also they can receive their visas on arrival in Nairobi airport. So that is already a gesture. Our Kenya Airways airline goes all over West Africa. Not only West Africa, but the entire continent. So we have a great network as Pride of Africa to spread ourselves all over and support our continent. So we are in the forefront into promoting the brand Africa and to make sure that it's not about Kenya, it's about Africa first. We got an impact on Ebola, and we got, all of us suffered. Kenya is almost 4,000 or 5,000 miles away from where Ebola was, and Ebola region was nearer to Europe, and we suffered in Kenya and in South Africa. So these are the things we need to change the perception. But it has to start from us. And I want to encourage UNWTO to start thinking about branding, helping us to brand the continent and come with an organization that will be able to take us forward. I think it's important for us. We don't, and I like what Nigeria has presented here. It first presented Africa and then presented Nigeria. And all of us have to do the same thing. Present Africa as a continent and then come to our individual countries and not think that we are competitors. We are not competitors. The minute Nigeria benefits, or Ghana, or South Africa, Kenya, I believe, will benefit as well. Thank you very much.
Honorable, you're making an interesting point, and I think what's also interesting is how you've been able to turn around tourism after a lot of terrorist attacks and a lot of instability. But that is exactly also what the Honorable in Cote d'Ivoire has been able to do as well. Honorable, how have you been able to swing around, because for many years there was a lot of instability in Cote d'Ivoire, but you've been able to turn that around, and now everybody's beginning to see an upswing in tourism and major events being held in Cote d'Ivoire. And I think this past year alone, we had 2 major events, Pan-African events being held in Cote d'Ivoire.
Merci beaucoup. Parlant de marque africaine, nous sommes bien conscients que la Côte d'Ivoire est un pays qui, de mon point de vue, se doit de montrer le modèle que nous avions pu expérimenter au reste de l'Afrique. Ce dont il est question ici, c'est comment rebondir après une grave crise qui secoue bien souvent les pays africains. Et la Côte d'Ivoire en est l'illustration parfaite de cette situation parce que, ayant vécu une grave crise politique, et à la suite de cela, nous avons connu un attentat sur une des plages les plus importantes de notre pays, à savoir à Bassam, aux alentours d'Abidjan. Évidemment, le pays a dû utiliser les moyens économiques, les moyens au niveau social pour améliorer son image de compétitivité parce que nous sommes la première nation productrice de cacao au monde. Nous sommes une nation qui est fière de son histoire parce que d'une diversité de 60 ethnies, on a trouvé les moyens de réunir les chefs pour parler à tous les peuples ivoiriens, mais au-delà, faire en sorte que nos agences en charge de la communication et de la promotion de la destination Côte d'Ivoire communiquent sur l'essentiel, c'est-à-dire un peuple hospitalier capable d'accueillir et de montrer au reste ce que nous avons de plus essentiel. C'est pourquoi la Côte d'Ivoire a pu rebondir et devenant la première nation de la zone UEMOA avec plus de 45% de la production de la richesse, mais au-delà, démontrer aussi que nous sommes aujourd'hui la 3e destination du tourisme d'affaires en Afrique après le Nigeria et le Maroc. Toutes choses qui sont à mettre à l'actif de la politique du gouvernement, mais l'ensemble des Ivoiriens qui ont bien voulu montrer ce que nous savions faire parce que nous avons été première nation de football après que nous ayons été disqualifiés récemment. Donc, toutes choses qui sont de nature à conforter la position de la Côte d'Ivoire et son leadership. Donc, je terminerai en vous disant, ce qui est essentiel pour une nation comme les nôtres qui vivent des crises, c'est d'arriver à montrer que nous sommes capables de juguler les phénomènes qui peuvent avoir un impact sur la sécurité. Donc, nous avons travaillé à consolider les agrégats au niveau sécuritaire et faire en sorte que la sécurité aide à développer l'économie et à conforter notre démarche. C'est pourquoi aujourd'hui, nous avons été en mesure d'accueillir le premier sommet au sud du Sahara, en Afrique, entre l'Union africaine et l'Union européenne. Et de mémoire de tous les organisateurs, c'était la première fois que autant de chefs d'État faisaient le déplacement et ça a été un succès. Pareil pour la francophonie et Casa pour tous les experts dans le domaine de la santé. Et ici, son Excellence l'ambassadeur qui a été ministre du Tourisme auparavant avant moi et notre directeur général en charge de la promotion sont là pour l'attester. Et je peux vous dire que c'est quelque chose qui valorise un pays. Et merci de pouvoir donner l'occasion de donner d'espérer à l'ensemble des Africains que c'est possible de repartir du bon pied quand on tombe. Ce n'est pas de prier de ne pas de tomber, mais prier pour que quand on tombe, on se relève et qu'on ait fier à lui, parce que l'Afrique a un potentiel énorme et nous avons quelque chose à revaloriser et à montrer au reste du monde. Merci.
I think for how Cote d'Ivoire and how Kenya have bounced back, we deserve a round of applause, and I agree with the minister. Ministers spoke a lot, and both ministers actually spoke to the importance of policy. And when I was speaking to Kwakye outside, and we were talking about how important government policy is, Kwakye, you said to me, building this tourism product, building Brand Africa, is not just about having the best infrastructure, but it's also about having the right policies. And then a second thing which was also mentioned was the issue about the narrative. As a marketer, I'm sure you have something to say about that.
Thank you very much. I think the ministers, it's great to know that there are issues to deal with security and stuff. But before I go to the policy and the narrative, I would like to just make a comment on the security. I think we should start challenging ourselves as Africans. Why is security a problem to Africa? And that's where we must start from. Security is a problem of the world. We know what is happening in France. We know what is happening in Spain. We know what is happening in the US, what is happening in the UK. And we get travel advisory when there is a lone incident. And I think that's an issue that we should be addressing. And I don't think that we got to start apologizing about security in Africa. Security is a global issue. And security shouldn't have an issue on an African brand. And I think we must start telling the story. There are a lot more good stories to tell about Africa. And I think I will basically take this opportunity to urge all of us here to start telling the good story rather than most of the time looking at the security issue, because the truth is security is a global phenomenon and it got to be addressed. Something happened in Las Vegas and it's a lone shooter. Something happens in Africa and it's terrorism. Yeah. And I think we got to start challenging that and referring to your shithole story. That is where it got to come from, and the charity starts with us. It begins at home. So I'll urge us here to start doing that, and I would like to urge the media to start putting security in perspective. Because if you look at it, 50 people being killed in Las Vegas, it doesn't easily happen in Africa. And the issue that needs attention, natural disasters, they are not covered. And we use that as narrative to basically kill the African brand. And that is an issue I want to talk about.
And it's probably not just about security, isn't it? Anything negative about Africa, we magnify, and the world focuses on that. But anything positive about the rest of the world, that becomes the focus.
That's correct.
Isn't that the challenge of us communicators?
That is challenge. I think we are deviating from the issue of policy, so we'll come back to that. But it's a challenge in the sense that if we look at Africa, we don't own any media. There's no media that comes from Africa. If you look at the global media, let's talk a few. You got the CNN, you got the BBC, you got the Al Jazeera, you got all the Times, whatever, the Economist. And I think from policy perspective, linking that, I would like to start urging that the leadership of Africa start encouraging or urging, collaborating, having serious dialogue with the private sector, private leadership to start looking at having an African media house, a media machinery that could tell our own story. The fact that we don't own any media is a very, very big challenge. They say what they want to say about us, and we don't have the power to manage and control. So going there, I think one of the issues of engagement between the private and the public sector in taking tourism forward is to basically start that engagement. Elsia was talking about, we have Dangote, we got a lot of powerful, rich media personalities in all sorts of businesses. But Africa doesn't own any media house. And I think to change the narrative, that is where you got to start from. If we have Africa born, Africa owned, we'll be able to influence what goes on air, and we can challenge what the external and the foreign media are talking about. And that's how we got to. So this could be linked to policy, and it could be linked to branding, it could be linked to changing the narratives.
But I want to disagree with you when you say we don't have the power to change this. And I'm sure Pascal will also speak to that, because, I mean, you've gone on to create a lot of channels to tell the African story, isn't it? Do you agree with him that we don't have power to change our narrative? Well, because we don't own CNN, we don't own BBC, but we own ourselves.
Well, it's true that it's very difficult to fight against those international media, and as you said, it's very important to have. It will be very important to have an African media that could portray all the good news that are coming from Africa. Because, as both ministers are saying, I mean, there are many positive things that are happening in Africa. But as we say, I mean, as they say in France, there is there is the savoir-faire and faire savoir. So we are very often lacking that aspect of making it known, no? All the positive things that have been happening in Africa. I mean, from our side, we have been developing mainly for the Spanish community a platform, to communicate about Africa. We have created a hashtag that is working very well that is called Positive Africa, which is in fact what we are trying to communicate, because at the end, it's true that, I mean, it's not, as everyone knows, it's not fake news that are coming very often from Africa, but most of the time is news, or only the negative news, that are coming from Africa. So it's true, we need to, in Spanish at least, and within the Spanish world, which is the one I'm working on, we need to work very, very hard on that, because even if Spain is the closest country from Europe to Africa, is maybe is a little bit far away in terms of cultural exchange, in terms of economic cooperation. But I mean, with Investour and many other things that are happening in Spain, I'm sure that this gap is going to be shortened and very fast. So in that sense, it's true that it's very difficult to fight against all those bad news that are coming for Africa. But I mean, like everything is one drop after the other drop that we will be able to fight against that and to communicate that positive Africa image that we know that is happening. As the Minister Fofana said, I mean, this event that was done in Abidjan between the European Union and the African Union, I mean, it's a big event. It's something that is not happening every year or every month. So I believe we need to do it step by step, and I'm sure that, I mean, at least from our point of view within the Spanish community, we will change that perception. But of course, stronger medias are needed. That's for sure.
I think Minister Fofana from Côte d'Ivoire wants to make a comment onto that, and perhaps when we speak to the two ministers as well, it would be quite interesting to get their perspective in terms from a policy perspective. Are we doing anything from a policy to enable African entrepreneurs to create those channels to tell the African story? Because I'm sure as government, what we can do is policy. We cannot actually even, or we cannot now go into the business of owning these channels, because we know we don't have the resources to be able to do that. Minister Fofana.
Merci. Oui, naturellement, il faut dire que pour nous qui gérons nos politiques au niveau de nos États, il est impérieux et même, je dirais, plus que nécessaire de faire en sorte que nous trouvions des nouveaux canaux par lesquels nous devrons véhiculer une image de marque de l'Afrique, et cette image qui soit une image positive. Donc, c'est une vision nouvelle qui doit être engendrée pour qu'on change de regard sur l'Afrique. L'Afrique doit apporter au reste du monde ce que le reste du monde n'a pas. Et ce que nous avons de plus, c'est notre capacité à présenter un environnement des plus rassurants. Un environnement où on est capable d'apporter une réponse à la question de la biodiversité, à la question de la préservation de l'environnement et de lutte contre les changements climatiques. Et l'Afrique comme réservoir du couvert forestier pour que nous arrivions à absorber les effets nocifs de l'homme. Et donc, cette Afrique a d'essentiel à apporter au reste du monde. Et donc, cette politique doit être valablement communiquée à partir de nouveaux canaux qui doivent être définis avec l'ensemble des véritables acteurs qui, de mon point de vue, ont intérêt à ce que l'Afrique soit vue sous un autre angle. Parce qu'en vérité, ce dont il s'agit, d'ici 2030, l'Afrique va doubler sa population. Pour mon pays, on passera de 25 millions d'habitants à 50 millions d'habitants. C'est-à-dire cette population va être à près de 70% à moins de 35 ans. C'est-à-dire ce sont des jeunes qui, si rien n'est fait pour que l'Afrique s'approprie les valeurs de développement et de croissance inclusive, il va avoir déplacement de ces populations vers l'Europe. Et donc, il faut éviter de diaboliser l'Afrique et faire que l'Afrique garde ses fils et apporte au reste du monde ce que nous avons de plus essentiel. Parce que, in fine, ce que l'Afrique subit, en d'autres termes, il est un adage de chez moi qui dit, évidemment, quand vous ne voulez pas que le riche s'installe sur vous, à fin de compte, vous rallongez la route de votre crédit. Autrement, c'est l'Afrique qui finira par faire perdre l'Europe si on y prend garde. Mais nous croyons à nos politiques et nous pensons que l'Afrique devra inventer des mécanismes nouveaux et c'est ce à quoi nous nous attelons. Et je pense que mon collègue pourrait faire des compléments sur ce que je viens de dire. Nullement qu'aucun gouvernement n'ait à penser aujourd'hui que nous pouvons continuer de faire les mêmes politiques sans tenir compte de ces changements qui sont en cours. Le monde évolue et on évolue l'évolution de ces pays-là à l'aune de leur capacité à s'approprier les valeurs technologiques, les valeurs transformationnelles, mais surtout le développement de l'indice humain et social. Voilà un peu ce que je peux dire et c'est vraiment mon collègue pourrait faire des apports sur les différentes politiques africaines au niveau gouvernemental.
Minister Balala, thank you, Minister. Minister Balala, just to give you a bit of context in responding and adding to Minister Fofana, Kenya has got quite a vibrant media culture and media environment. That's what, and the other thing that Kenya has done, which is a world standard or world example, is with M-Pesa. So surely, with what you've been able to do with M-Pesa, which is the number of transactions going through M-Pesa are greater than any other in the entire world put together. It is the most referenced idea of a social enterprise. Surely if we can do that, and I don't know what you did from a policy perspective, surely if we can do that, you can similarly do that from a media, because I'm sure initiatives like M-Pesa have gone on to change the narrative about what people think about Kenya and East Africa. In terms of Africa is a very innovative continent. Minister Balala.
Thank you very much. I believe that Africa's narrative has changed, and it's changing slowly. The problem we have is that the global media and also local media in Africa are obsessed with negativity. When you come to Kenya, we have a very vibrant, open media and policies on the media. But it is the same local media that only propagates negative incidents. And it has to start from us in our countries. Our media patriotic? That is another question we need to ask. I think we should allow the freedom of expression and the freedom of the media, but I think they have gone now over that position. When you look at the global media, we finance the global media. We, the third world, finance the global media. We advertise in the global media. But we only advertise, and you know most people, they don't like to see advertisement. They want to see the news. When it comes to news, then every news comes from Africa is negative. Even our invention as M-Pesa, the mobile money that we have invented, that is historic all over the world, it is not propagated the way we want it to be propagated. It is propagated the way the first world wanted to be propagated. And that's why we don't get the value from it. Maybe we don't have the muscles to do it. But in terms of policy, yes, I think we have to have a clear policy on propagating our own narrative. And we need to invest as governments. We need to invest in security and safety. We need to invest in infrastructure. And then we need to invest in marketing the positive achievements that we have done. And we are very clear in Kenya. When you look at the propagation, the negative propagation done by the media in our country, in Kenya, you think the country is burning. We have seen, we've just gone through 2 elections, a record in the world and in the continent of Africa. An election is held, the president wins an election, and then the Supreme Court nullifies the elections. And still, the incumbent president respects the rule of law by going for a re-election. And because definitely in politics is a very vibrant and noisy, yeah, we have protests, and we have a few people burning tires on the road. But then CNN, Al Jazeera, BBC earmarks that Kenya is burning, which is totally unfair. We have to pick telephone calls to talk to these media houses, but then they ignore us because we don't have the power and the muscle as a continent to shut them down, because in the name of free media. And these are the issues that we need to think seriously. What do we do? Probably a proposal by my colleague here of having our own media or partnering with the existing media. Our own media, we have the Dangotes, we have the others. The government cannot run media houses. But can we have policies and incentives that we create investors within the continent of Africa to have media and the freedom of that media, but also to look at Africa as a business opportunity. If you promote it negatively, you're going to lose business for your own company. Thank you very much.
I want to go back to Dr. Wu and try and see. I'll come to you in a minute. I just want to perhaps for you to comment here whether the stories that are coming out of Africa are part of the reasons that we don't have the Chinese coming into Africa. Because you hear the two ministers have spoken about there's a preponderance of negative messages coming out of Africa and about Africa. Is that one of the reasons we would say, or one of the contributing reasons? I know you spoke earlier about investment in infrastructure and all that.
No, I would say no. The reason is Chinese are the least affected by bad news. The reason is if one is worried about security, there's 3 people are waiting in line to get there. But the real mechanism, the practical barrier for Chinese, not just Chinese, are coming to Africa. Africa hasn't been top 10 destination for most of the other tourists generating because of the infrastructure, but also long flights. We are going to Africa. There's few direct flights, Kenya Airways and so on. Those are doing well. When there's direct flights, like Ethiopia, for example, airlines flying, their flights are doing extremely well. The most profitable routes are from China, actually. But the real, just to add to your previous question on how to eliminate or prevent such bad news, actually, the ministers have the answer, I guess. You hold the key. When Ebola happened and so on, I was in Africa, then I was 3 times. I was not worried. I was in Zimbabwe that the minister was saying that USA shouldn't do that, what they did of having just one American citizen returning from Africa and caught Ebola. They advised the whole country, and then other Western countries followed, advised them to go to all parts of Africa. They probably didn't have the geography of knowing how big Africa is. I'm glad that LCR did show that African genuine is much bigger than just say, oh, one country has Ebola, and then all the Africans were affected. I wonder, now as you may or may not know that there's Australian flu going on. No country, no America, no UK issued the warning to go to Australia. When actually Australian flu currently is killing hundreds, not just in their country, but in UK even, but they don't issue that, advisory. So my advice to the ministers, since you are here, I would I'd like you to get the message to your ministers as well. Unite against other countries unfairly treating you because you know it's unfair because you can tell them, you are the ministers. But they may not listen if one minister says. But if you all, like when Trump made that directly comments, it's not acceptable. So African countries stood up in the UN, so he took notice. He had to apologize. But if there's, again, some so-called, not necessarily bad news, I mean, the flu or whatever happens anywhere, but if a country unfairly treats the whole continent, stood up for it, because you guys have the power. I mean, you have the majority in the UN. You have the UN WTO here. You almost had the Minister of Zimbabwe to become Secretary General. Hopefully next one will be. Maybe Mr. Balala put your hands up there. So speak for Africans. So when you stood up together, the power is much greater. The Western media don't invent stories. They follow their government. So when the Ebola was broadcasted, is when USA advise their nation to give that advisory notice, and UK and so on, BBC would blow out of proportion. I think the source is the government. When they treat you unfairly, you just stood up and that bad news should be buried much quicker.
I think that's an interesting point. They follow their governments, they don't create the stories. So our governments need to lead. That's what you're saying in this, in ensuring that our stories are protected. Yeah. Pascal, you wanted to add to the conversation?
Yeah, just about what you were saying, Minister. It's true that the big medias are not present in big African medias are not present in Africa. But nowadays we can see that the mainstream medias they're losing power in terms of influence, and I think there is a big opportunity for the African countries to have all those alternative medias where we see that in many countries, like everybody knows that Trump has been elected thanks almost to social media. That was the same also for Obama. So we don't need to think very much always on mainstream media, and I think there is a positive conclusion of what you say, is that orientation at least is that African countries can use the alternative medias by creating a very powerful workforce that can influence all the youth who is spending a lot of time on those medias. So we all know that through Facebook that is very powerful in Africa. This is something, for example, I see that even professionally and personally, the people are using Facebook in Africa. This is not the case this is not very much the case in Europe, where they segment a little bit LinkedIn or Facebook. So I believe there is here a strong opportunity, a very powerful opportunity for Africa to use those alternative media to change also the perception of Africa.
Maybe a quick one on this one. Kenya has, from the 43 million people population we have, 37 million people are having mobile phones. We are well connected in terms of mobile connectivity. 80% of our country has coverage, and we are the silicon savannah of Africa. So yes, we are the tech nation, and we should use these youth to actually start propagating positive. And I agree with Pascal here, because it is the alternative media that can help us. Because the mainstream media has their own agenda and their own policies. So yes, we in Kenya, Tourism Board, we are now investing into digital marketing. We are trying to change our model of marketing rather of the mainstream media, and we go through the digital marketing and use our youth in Africa to promote the continent. And this is where we might have some help as well.
And we've got a lot of youth. 70 under age of 30. Yep. We've got a lot of them who are many unemployed, and this is an opportunity as well to create entrepreneurial opportunities for them. Kwakye, are you perhaps in closing that comment about controlling our narrative and all those, looking at how Africa responded to Donald Trump's comment about the continent, are you happy, or what are your views in terms of how we responded? Is this a new Africa emerging? Because I guess for the first time, you saw a pan-African response. And not only that, but you also saw individual countries asserting, Botswana asking the question, do you refer, is my country dead to you? South Africa, Nigeria, all the African countries individually responded, but collectively as a continent, we also, is that the model that now we should be viewing, or is that a turnaround, if you will?
Yeah, I would say that is a very positive trend. And what our presidents and our leaders and our ministers are saying is that we don't owe anyone in this world a damn. And it also shows we are independent. And the truth is that the rest of the world America depends on Africa. Take the Africans out of America. Take the South Americans out of America. Take the Arabs out of America. And there is no America. The whole economy will collapse. So the truth is our presidents have spoken. But my view is we need to have a lot of more Pan-African platforms to deliberate on issues of innovative leadership, thought leadership, issues impacting on policy. And that is where we are going. And that kind of collective approach is working. Now, I will say something here. We, as African Tourism Leadership, is creating a platform, hopefully we'll be announcing soon, ministers, called the Africa Tourism Leadership Forum. And the whole initiative is to see how we bring the public sector and then the private sector together to deliberate some of these issues and come up at least once a year with concrete actions coming in addition to what CAF and the rest of the industry. But there got to be a Pan-African initiative. Another important thing, the truth is if we grow intra-Africa travel, we might not need the rest of the world. You look at the population in Africa, the middle class is growing. Minister talk about the youth, the money, everything. We might not need the rest of the world. So what it means is that we have to put measures in place to grow our intra-Africa travel. By looking at growing the low-cost carriers that are here, Ghana is doing a fantastic work in Ghana where every 35 minutes you can get a flight to any major city in Ghana. I know South Africa, we have that, a low-cost carrier. I think there might be a couple in Kenya. And that needs to grow because people are flying. And we talk about poverty. If you go to Ghana, I don't see poverty. You go to Accra, you want to fly to Kumasi. An old lady, my mother flies. He says, I can afford it. It's very cheap. So those are the initiatives. The second point, Minister, you spoke about the use of new media. But one thing that we should advocate for, in particular in tourism, the data charges, and that is where policy comes in again. Mm-hmm. And I would say I was in Ghana last time, and the data charges are so huge. So people normally will switch off their data during the day and use them at a time that nobody wants them. So if we want to change the narrative and use the new media to go, one of the areas we got to look at is data charges. My last point, I think it's high time. I don't think there is any finance minister in this room. There is anyone from Treasury. That is a very important point, and they are a major part of the equation. The marketing budget in all countries for tourism is the smallest, although countries have identified tourism as a priority areas in their countries. However, there's no budget. You go to FITO, and you see how many countries, not that they don't want to come, not that we don't have the professionals. The marketing budget comes secondary. But every sector of the economy will be depleted and tourism will still live. So we have to start advocating with the finance ministers, and they have to join us, Minister. I will kindly ask next time you come with the finance minister. Let's start educating them about what tourism is about. And it's not about people traveling and just going to have fun. It's not that is what it's about. It's not people traveling and wanting to get per diem in their pockets. It's about marketing the country. Imagine having a whole African pavilion together, branded as Africa is here. What that would do in Spain.
The Minister of South Tome is also Minister of Finance.
Right.
So it's a very, question is a very interesting point because when you look at the numbers, you look at a country like Seychelles. I know it's only 100,000 people, but they get a lot of tourists in there. But 60% of the people are in the tourism, are employed in the tourism directly and indirectly. You look at Mauritius at 25. You look at Cabo Verde is 35. So it'll be quite interesting to see whether the budget allocations are exactly the same.
Let me add to what you're saying.
Because what I agree with you is if in a country like South Africa, I think it's 10% employees, one wants to see whether the budgets are the same, and we should agree with you. But I want to get
just global average, we all know it's not a new statistics. Tourism, out of every 10 people, one is employed by tourism. Yeah. And we have to get the finance ministers to agree to this.
So as a minimum, 10% of all the budgets, when we leave here, we have to tell our bosses, our colleagues, 10% of the budget is going to tourism.
And we've got to advocate for that.
Let me listen. Let's get some comments from the... Have you got microphones that can go around? You got some questions. Let me see whose hand went the highest. You tall, I noticed you, sir. So I'm teasing. I'll start here. Microphone? Microphone is coming. So let's take a couple of questions. Let's engage the ministers and some of the thought leaders directly on some of the challenges that you are facing in driving tourism.
Good morning, everyone. I think as we speak of
also introduce yourself,
branding,
please.
Yeah. Jose Gonçalves, Minister of Tourism and Transport from Cabo Verde. Good morning, everyone. I think as we speak of Africa in terms of a brand, in the context of tourism, we're looking from outside in and not inside out. We are buying the narrative that Africa is seen as one homogeneous entity. Which other destination in the world, in which continent, is marketed as one entity? What we have heard here from my colleague ministers, Balala and Fofana, and also we saw from the video from Nigeria, is the rich diversity of our continent. It is not one country. Africa is a collection of diverse countries, rich in tradition, culture, nature has well endowed. So I think we must first seek through tourism and using the media, in terms particularly the internet, and communicating directly, because that's the trend now in marketing tourism, is not packaging so much, but going directly to the consumer and have the TripAdvisor and others influence. There, our voice will be seen, because the true experience of the tourist that comes, they will speak to their community and to others. So I think we must first then really address the issue to fight against Africa being seen as a one collective whole. And it's really diversity that must come out, and each of our countries have the responsibility to promote the best that we have. And I think the message will get across. Thank you.
So it's about taking I think what we begin to hear is many of the driving issues of Brand Africa are around the narrative, around the story of Africa, how it is told. And that gets to influence a lot of things. That gets to influence the investment. Minister, just a quick question. Are you spending 35% of your budget on tourism? Are you getting 25% of the national fiscus on tourism? Just a question. You don't have to answer now if you don't want.
Well, no, we are not. We are not.
But we should, right?
Because 25% of our budget is a significant amount in a country that's heavily indebted. However, I must say that also we work collectively with the operators, because again, the operators also promote. Our tourism, is driven largely by the package, which the promoters, the transporters, and the charters, all these are working collectively. So we have to also look at the promoting of tourism, including the tourists themselves that have good experience that is going to be, quality. So it's not just a question of money alone. It's being creative and using diverse channels, all the way from individual, direct, positive experience of the tourist, all the way to the state budget, plus into, of course, those who are earning money in terms of the business, where they are, transport companies, where they are promoters, and there's many people on the food chain, as you know, in terms of this promotion. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And we'll go to the next one for the next question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator and panelists. I am the Minister of Tourism from Gambia. Well, I think we are not fair to the Western media, and we are not fair to Western countries. The problem is not about what BBC says or what CNN says or Al Jazeera. It's what we do as Africans. As Balala have said, we're the one feeding them the money that they're using to propagate their agenda. And they have every right to defend what they want to do. And those countries have every right to promote what they want to promote. The problem is Africans feel very inferior to what they have and don't seem to recognize the importance and, of course, the value of who they are and what they are. Let me give you an example. Nigeria has one of the best television channels in the world. One of the best you can find in the world. You go to South Africa, SABC, Kenyan Broadcasting Corporation. You go to Ghana, we have the media, we have the network in Africa. But we do not want to use them. And we don't want to recognize them. We don't want to patronize them. I was staying in a hotel in Douala, Pullman Hotel. I looked at all the television channels. There was not one single channel from Nigeria. Every channel in that hotel room was Western. outside and nothing from Africa. And yet still we can sit here and blame African or non-African media houses. That's most unfair. I think we're not doing the right thing. And we should acknowledge and accept that. And again, looking at the issue, the gentleman talked about security should not be an issue. It should be an issue in the absence of governance. There is malgovernance. We create the insecurity ourselves by insisting that we have to be in power for life. We do not want to recognize the wishes of the people. We impose ourselves on people. Of course, security will be an issue. It has to be an issue in Africa because we are creating the insecurity. We talked about the Chinese market. I just want to be quick because I don't want to take the whole time of everybody. China is a unique destination we must acknowledge and accept that China have everything in the world. They have every type of climate within China. I was in China 3 weeks ago and I went all over China. And I can tell you they are one of the best tourism destinations where you can never, they don't even know what snow is in their life. While you go to other areas, you find everything of Europe in China. China have more interstate tourism than interstate tourism because they move within China. And to bring them out of China, it has to be corporate tourism. To be honest, let's look at the figures. There are more Chinese tourists in South Africa and Nigeria, not because they go there for pleasure, they went there for money. These are corporate tourists. And that's what China is looking for now. China is not yet prepared for leisure tourism in Africa. And if you look at the statistics, this year, all the figures are going down on China. All of you who have Chinese tourists, your figures are down this year. Why? Because that is not, we are not ready for the Chinese market. Language we have to talk about. The culture, the food that the Chinese people eat, we need to be prepared for it. And more so, the destination is not so near to China. Talking about flying for 17 hours, 20 hours, 19 hours, you want to come to a destination when you can fly within China and get all that you are looking for in Africa within 3 hours in China. We need to really refocus ourselves and look inwards. How many of you spend your holidays in Africa? Very few of you. You prefer to come to Europe for holidaying. Why don't you go to Cote d'Ivoire? Why don't you go to Kenya, Gambia, other parts of Africa? No, you would rather come with your family to Europe and spend all your money here. And yet still you want people to come to your country to come and spend their holidays when you do not want to showcase and promote your own continent. Interstate African tourism, we need to promote if you want to be there. And I think really that's the bottom line.
So the problem is not the West, the problem is the rest of Africa. So I think point noted. I'll take one more question. Okay, I'll take just the two hands which are up with apologies. May I start with the lady? Madam.
Good morning, everybody. I think I'll just respond to, my name, sorry. I'm Dr. Mtale. I am the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Tourism and Arts from Zambia. The minister who last spoke, the honorable minister, just talked about why we go out of Africa for holidays. I was about to talk about the issue of we make it hard to go from one country to the other. I think we need to sit down and think about how can we make it easier for an African to move from Zambia to South Africa to Malawi or to Congo without having to go through all those vigorous immigration issues. I flew from Berlin to Madrid and nobody checked my passport because I entered through Berlin. So I think we need to begin to think a bit like that. I don't know why we are so insecure about allowing and opening our borders. But if we want tourism in Africa to thrive and to grow, we have to soften our rules because it's quite irritating to leave Zambia and go to Johannesburg and stand in a queue at immigration. I think we need to look at that. Thank you.
So the challenge is making it easy for people to move around the continent. I was going to talk about that in closing, but I think the point has been made. There's a, is it here, sir? Yes.
Well, thank you, sir. I'm an ambassador from South Africa in Spain. There's a saying, that an old adage that says that the lions will always be victims and the hunters will be victors as long as the lions don't tell their own story. And I believe myself that that's where the issue is. Yes, we can talk about diversity. It is our strength as Africans. There are so many things that we can identify that are very strong about Africa. We don't need many examples. There are so much strength that we have. However, the challenge that is facing us now is that we are being attacked as one. We are being attacked as one because we are seen as one, because we are one as Africans. And therefore it is important, the point that was raised, an example that we need to have a national organization that brings up a very strong brand about Africa. We need that. And we need to be very, very vocal as Africans. The point that has been raised by the minister, also the question of inferiority, is there. We must begin to appreciate our strengths as Africans and defend ourselves. I hear that we are proud about the responses and of what came from different countries. But still, I believe that our voice was not as strong as it was supposed to be. It was not strong as it was supposed to be because that insult is a very, very big insult. In fact, it is completely unprecedented that you find a president of a country uttering such a statement about continents, about people, generalizing in that way, and still continues to operate. And goes on and appreciates, and is definitely going to visit some of the countries that they actually insulted, and is going to be welcomed with red carpet. We are being attacked, sir, as one. And we need to defend ourselves as one. Then the diversity, later. We can come up with our diversity and explain how diverse we are. Because we are colonized as one in the first place. We're colonized as Africans. And our countries were divided and our cultures were destroyed. Our languages were destroyed. It's a continuation and a perpetuation of the same thing. We can come up with a commercial terms and come up, but the fact of the matter, it is the destruction of the Africans as Africans. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you. And the last comment from the floor. Yes, sir. At the back there.
Merci, Monsieur le modérateur. Je suis Monsieur Dioumande Mamadou, opérateur économique en Côte d'Ivoire, agence de voyage, président de la Fédération nationale de l'industrie touristique de Côte d'Ivoire, qui regroupe les agences de voyage, les hôtels, les restaurateurs, les locations de véhicules et l'artisanat d'art. Je remercie très sincèrement les organisateurs de ce panel et dire aussi merci aux panélistes. Ils ont touché du doigt certains problèmes. C'est vrai, nous parlons des médias, mais aujourd'hui, nous, acteurs professionnels sur le terrain, les politiques doivent se saisir ou promouvoir tous les tests réglementaires politiques pour le développement du tourisme africain et dans notre cas sous-régional. Dans notre sous-région communautaire, l'UEMOA, nous avons la politique commune du tourisme. Et cette politique commune du tourisme, il y a eu un programme de développement régional. Et ce programme de développement régional visait de diminuer ou de radicaliser tous les problèmes qui peuvent entraver le développement du tourisme, à savoir la connectivité. Vous avez parlé, les ministres ont parlé de la connectivité. Quand on est en Côte d'Ivoire, pour aller dans la sous-région, à Dakar, qui est à 2 heures de vol, on paye plus cher dans la connectivité qu'aller à New York ou à Paris. On parle aussi, vous avez parlé de la communication. La vraie communication, c'est les résidents. Et en Afrique, nous avons les ambassadeurs européens, asiatiques, nous avons les résidents. Il faut développer le tourisme intérieur. Le tourisme intérieur, nous le faisons, mais pas assez. Le tourisme sous-régional, parce que quand on est en Afrique de l'Ouest et que nous, la population africaine de la sous-région, peuvent se déplacer, je pense que ça peut nous amener à combattre au moins les médias africains quand ils disent « Ah, il y a l'Ebola, il y a l'insécurité », mais ceux qui vivent la réalité, ceux-là, ils peuvent contredire les médias africains et européens. Nos médias, déjà, nous, les politiques, n'arrivent pas à maîtriser. Les ministres l'ont dit tout à l'heure, le Kenyan l'a dit. La première des choses dans la sous-région en Afrique, vous voyez la une de nos journaux. La une de nos journaux ne permet pas à un Européen, à un Asiatique de venir en Afrique. Et pas du tout. La première des choses, quand il y a un coup de feu quelque part, c'est toute la sous-région qui est embrasée par les médias. Et c'est une mission, je pourrais dire que c'est une mission, ça peut être une mission de la communauté européenne, pour ne pas, parce que nous parlons de l'économie. Et l'économie, c'est la protection de l'économie européenne. N'allez pas en Afrique. La proximité. Nous, en tant qu'opérateurs économiques, nous croyons plus au développement du tourisme intérieur et sous-régional.
Thank you, monsieur. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. So it's about protecting the African tourism product as well. In closing, in wrapping up, I'm going to ask each individual just for half a minute, but I will give them the wrap-up question that they need to wrap up around, which really comes from the floor. The first one to Minister. Oh, apologies. Minister, can I please give the minister one more minister an opportunity to speak?
Merci. Donc, nous avons, moi c'est M. Boto Ahmed, ministre du Tourisme et de l'Artisanat du Niger. Nous avons écouté donc avec beaucoup d'attention tous les panélistes et les différents intervenants. Et la question récurrente qui est revenue, c'est surtout la capacité de l'Afrique à offrir les conditions, en tout cas idoines, pour permettre au tourisme de se développer. C'est sûr que tous les intervenants qui m'ont précédé ont relaté un certain nombre de préoccupations. Mais nous, au Niger, la principale préoccupation aujourd'hui qui empêche au tourisme de se développer, en tout cas qui nous empêche d'offrir aux touristes les meilleures conditions de visite possibles, c'est la sécurité. Et ce problème de sécurité, nous, on le vit dans notre chair parce qu'on y consacre plus de 15% de notre budget. C'est quand même exorbitant. Voilà un pays qui a d'énormes ressources. Nous avons un potentiel extraordinaire sur le plan touristique. Et il y a quelques années, nous constituions l'une des plus grandes destinations en Afrique. Et si ça devait continuer, aujourd'hui, nous serions certainement parmi les premiers pays touristiques d'Afrique. Malheureusement, compte tenu des problèmes sécuritaires, nous n'arrivons pas à développer, en tout cas à valoriser ce potentiel. Pourquoi? Parce que les questions sécuritaires nous accablent. Elles ne nous accablent pas forcément par notre fait, mais par les faits des autres. Parce que si aujourd'hui nous avons des difficultés, c'est peut-être le problème de Libye, les problèmes libyens qui nous affectent, c'est peut-être le problème malien qui nous affecte, c'est le problème nigérien qui nous affecte. Et à côté de ces problèmes, des puissances sont là présentes chez nous, mais malheureusement, elles n'arrivent pas à créer les conditions sécuritaires qui puissent permettre à leurs ressortissants, puisque c'est leurs ressortissants qui viennent chez nous. Et quelque part même, la situation, c'est que nous vivons une situation de, j'allais dire, d'injustice. Parce que toutes les chancelleries sont présentes chez nous. Et toutes les chancelleries sont témoins de ce qui se passe chez nous en termes de sécurité. Et qu'aujourd'hui, le Niger, plus que beaucoup de pays, y compris des pays occidentaux, offre de meilleures conditions sécuritaires. Mais pourtant, elles continuent, ces chancelleries, malgré tout, à maintenir notre pays sur la bande rouge. Ce qui, du reste, à mon avis, est proprement injuste parce que, tout simplement, ces mêmes chancelleries sont présentes chez nous, ils vivent tous les jours le quotidien que vivent les Nigériens, et ils savent que tous ceux qui partent chez nous reviennent entiers sans aucun problème, mais ils continuent quand même à présenter nos pays comme étant des pays qui sont infréquentables, alors même que cela est faux. Ils sont présents à travers leurs armées chez nous, mais malheureusement, nous n'avons pas l'impression que cette présence les rassure eux-mêmes, à plus forte raison, rassurer les autres qui ne sont pas des Africains. Aujourd'hui, le Niger, c'est le principal pays de transit. Nous sommes des migrants. Nous sommes à cheval entre l'Afrique du Nord et l'Afrique de l'Ouest. Et tous les migrants de l'Afrique de l'Ouest passent par le Niger. Nous avons de sérieux problèmes, pas par notre fait, mais par le fait des autres. Et la question de la migration est une question, aujourd'hui, qui est vécue comme une question sécuritaire, et chez nous, et chez les Occidentaux. Et bien, puisque c'est de ça qu'il s'agit, ils ont mis les moyens pour essayer de limiter cette migration-là parce que ça les affecte. Mais je ne suis pas convaincu qu'on est plus en sécurité en France ou en Allemagne ou en Belgique qu'au Niger. Parce que, malheureusement, chaque fois qu'il y a un incident en France, il est médiatisé, je dis un incident au Niger, même s'il n'a coûté la vie à personne, il est médiatisé comme si tout le Niger est en insécurité. Alors même que, je peux vous dire que l'attentat terroriste qu'il y a eu au Bataclan, en une seule fois, il a tué plus de personnes qu'on n'en a jamais tué pratiquement au Niger, pendant presque tous les conflits qui se sont passés. C'est pour dire que vraiment, je n'arrive pas à comprendre cette focalisation sur l'Afrique, qui, à mon avis, est proprement injuste par rapport à ceux qui doivent nous aider normalement à relever ces défis-là. Ils sont présents chez nous et je pense que les Européens, je veux dire les Occidentaux de façon générale, doivent avoir un regard beaucoup plus attentif aux problèmes que nous vivons. Aujourd'hui, en Amérique, ce n'est pas le terrorisme forcément qui est le problème, c'est les Américains eux-mêmes, parce qu'ils sont armés et un bon matin, un Américain peut se lever pour tuer 50 Américains. Ça, c'est de l'insécurité aussi. Pourquoi toutes ces questions ne constituent pas des questions qui peuvent faire reculer le tourisme en Amérique, alors qu'en Afrique, il y a vous trouvez très rarement une personne qui va se lever pour tuer quelqu'un. D'ailleurs, je veux dire au Niger, c'est l'un des pays où les attentats, en tout cas, sont les moins développés. Et je ne peux pas comprendre jusqu'à présent qu'on continue à nous maintenir sur une bande rouge, alors même que nous offrons quand même beaucoup de conditions pour la pratique du tourisme. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Minister. So security and perceptions. Something happens in one country, the rest of the continent gets painted with the same brush. I think that's the Minister's central argument that we need to resolve as a continent. In wrapping up and in closing, I'll ask one question to each panelist, if they can just restrict it to half a second of response. Some of the issues that have been raised from the floor, and I'll start in Côte d'Ivoire with Minister Fofana. Minister, it's been said that it takes about 30 or so visas for an African to move around the continent. And it's also been mentioned as well how long it takes for a Chinese to leave from China to come to Africa. What are we doing as Africans to resolve the issues around visas and intra-Africa travel as far as that's concerned? Or what can we do, rather? So maybe let me not just say what are we doing. Let me say, what can we do? Kenya, it's now Kenya. You can get visa on arrival, and I mean, I flew to Angola, which was the first time South Africa and Angola had a bilateral agreement to get rid of visas, zero. I flew to Nigeria a couple of weeks ago. I think I paid $250 for my visa. So we've got quite a range in terms of, so it's two things really. Minister.
Merci. Je pense que toutes les questions que nous venons d'aborder se résument à cela. On ne peut véritablement créer une véritable marque qu'en créant les facteurs clés de succès d'une véritable politique touristique en Afrique. Et entre autres aspects, les questions qui ont été abordées, on lie à cela la question de la connectivité aérienne, parce qu'il faut déréglementer le ciel africain pour que nous ayons des meilleurs tarifs et qu'il y ait une meilleure démocratisation du ciel. Et à ce prix-là, on aura à permettre à ce que les Africains arrivent à se déplacer au sein de notre continent. La question de l'accessibilité grâce au problème de visa que vous évoquez est essentielle. Et le problème des visas, entre blocs de pays, nous avions différents blocs. L'Afrique de l'Ouest que je connais, c'est la CEDEAO. Au niveau de la CEDEAO, il y a la volonté des chefs d'État à faire respecter la libre circulation des biens et des personnes. Et il n'y a pas de visa entre les pays membres de la CEDEAO. Vous pouvez vous déplacer et partir et revenir à tous les points de la CEDEAO sans avoir eu recours au visa. Donc, c'est quelque chose que le reste de l'Afrique devra s'approprier. Et nous venons d'adopter un calendrier qui va adopter la monnaie unique entre les pays de la CEDEAO à partir de 2020. Pour que nous n'ayons pas à faire des échanges quand on se déplace et toutes choses qui sont de nature à conforter cette politique. C'est pourquoi je dis les facteurs clés de succès liés à l'accessibilité, à la connectivité et au problème fondamental qui est de faire en sorte qu'il y ait aussi la sécurité. Il ne faut pas qu'on se leurre. Il faut que nous mettons au cœur de nos politiques la maîtrise de la sécurité et de toutes ces notions pour que demain, l'Afrique tire son épingle du jeu et que l'économie touristique puisse prendre toute sa place dans les enjeux de notre développement économique. Et c'est comme ça que je terminerai en vous disant qu'il est fondamental que nous circulions entre blocs de pays et entre Africains sans avoir déboursé un franc pour des questions de visa.
Thank you, Minister. It's a single currency, single visa, start one region at a time and apply across the board. It's happening in East Africa community, and it's happening in some parts of ECOWAS. So that's one solution in terms of how we're going to overcome this challenge. Then we go to Kenya, we go to Minister Balala, and we speak to the issue of security. How are we going to resolve or how can we resolve the perception and the reality of security issues in Africa? Because I guess we have to be honest with ourselves. There's the perception, there's also reality. How do we resolve that to ensure that it doesn't become an impediment to tourism? Minister.
Well, I'll talk about security in a moment, but I wanted us to look at it differently. Let's be smarter. Let's be clever in addressing this issue. We know we have been accused, there have been insults, but by reacting alone or by getting angry, we are not going to resolve the problem. The truth of the matter, my colleague from the Smile of Africa country, which is Gambia, he told us, the reality is we need to be clever, address the issue of governance. Insecurity will be there when our people are living in poverty, when they are mismanaged, when there is no freedom of expression and freedom of speech, when there is no rule of law. That is insecurity. And truly speaking, it happens in Africa. We cannot deny it. We must stand up and change. And I can tell you, most of the countries in Africa are trying to achieve that. You talked about visas. Most of the regional blocs, ECOWAS, East African Community, SADC, have their own arrangements of tariff, have their own arrangement of movements, and we are succeeding. Between Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda, we have a uni-visa for foreigners. But between our 5 countries, Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, Uganda, and Southern Sudan, we said our African brothers in East Africa, They can come and live in Kenya using an ID card. They can buy land in ID card. They can invest by ID card. They don't need work permits. That is how we treat our brothers in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr.
And that, 1 minute, please. Then there is the issue of infrastructure and investment. We need to invest in infrastructure. And I can tell you the truth, before China came into Africa, we had no infrastructure. We had a joke. And now China has invested with us in infrastructure. They are not doing it because they love us, because they benefit from us. And we have done that partnership, and we need to continue with that. It's nothing for free. You give me something, I get something in return. Before, we used to get only money to sustain governments so that they can support the Western world. Today, we are partnering with our Western countries and our Asian countries. And the third one is partnerships, global partnerships. And I said about China, we wouldn't have built our railway line, fast train, if we didn't partner with China. And quite a number of infrastructure in Africa is through partnership with China. And that is what we want to take. Look at other regions. China is one, Asia, the Middle East. And not only forget the Western world and America. Let's partner with them, but on our terms this time, not on their terms. And that way we can. And then finally, intra-Africa travel and promotion is fundamental. We receive revenues of $1 billion. 54% of that revenue is done by domestic tourism. And that is what we have sustained our tourism sector. So tourism sector in terms of domestic, regional, and of the African continent, I think is another big opportunity for us to benefit. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister. I think the central point there being in resonance with the Minister of Gambia, that security starts with governance. So in terms of how we as Africans run our governments and how we run ourselves from a governance perspective. So, and of course, partnerships and many other points you've made. In last three comments, now remember, you're not an elected member. You three are not elected members, so you don't have the stage to talk as long as elected members of government. So when you come to when I say a minute over, you go. Belda, Mr. Belda, Pascal, just from a media ownership perspective, your last few comments, because a lot of things have been said about the message of the story of Africa. Your last comments on that.
I mean, just
what Africa needs to do.
I mean, the topic of the subject was to brand Africa, and I think that things have been improving a lot for the last 10 years, and as Minister Balala said, the Chinese have done a lot in Africa. They have been helping a lot the economic development. I would say that there is one issue that I wanted to mention is which we have been also talking a little bit, is when there is a crisis time. I think in terms of communication, it's very important when there is a crisis time to have like a cabinet or to have like some people who are working in order to cool down that crisis time that sometimes makes a lot of noise and it lasts for many months or even many years, when it was the case of Ebola. So this is an important issue that I think government should address. I don't think it's the Ministry of Tourism that should address that, but it's very important in terms of communication to cool down very fast those kinds of bad news, and that can be done not easily, but it can be done through the alternative medias.
So the narrative is improving. We just need to react fast when it happens.
That's correct. Yeah.
Kwakye, the Minister of Cabo Verde and the ambassador from South Africa seems to have two different views in terms of, and the great author from Nigeria, Chimamanda Adichie, says there's no single story of Africa. How are we going to deal with this? Is there a single story? How are we going to deal with these two narratives that the two excellencies are talking about? How do we tell the story of Africa? Is it either or is it both?
No,
just answer that question, then move to the next.
Okay, it's both. Africa is a single but multifaceted destination, and that is what Africa is. And that is the way it's going to be presented.
So Africa, it's a single, multifaceted country. It's not either or. And I'm going to China.
Sorry, one important point. The brand side, I think one message, we got to start sweating our MICE tourism assets. You see, we saw what the World Cup did to South Africa, what the World Cup did to Africa. It changed a lot of narratives. So my plea, we got to start bidding for big events, and that will help us to go a very long way, and it will help to change the narrative. So let's sweat our MICE tourism assets. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kwakye. And finally, to China, you've received so much praise, Dr. Wu, for the good that you've done for our continent. We just need more Chinese to visit. I think you heard from the Minister of Gambia said, we're not feeding you the right food because we don't understand what you eat and how you like to sleep. What else do we need to do to ensure that the Chinese feel home and welcome in Africa?
We would love for African food like you do, like Chinese, for sure. That's not the major issue. Infrastructure, Minister Balala said that's why I'm attracted here and brought China Invest Overseas to support the Investour, because I thought this is more about investment, because Africa does need the investment. China was poor 35 years ago. We were just like you or most countries, but we developed the economy, people start coming. So if Africa can attract more investments, that will be the key. Investment in air connectivity and infrastructure, hotel, resort, and so on. The soft training is easier. When the interaction started, we learn from each other. We are very accommodating. But then it's the visa. The minister talked about visa. Any country removes the visa for the Chinese, they got 100% of increase, given Morocco in Africa as an example, Seychelles and Mauritius and so on. That's another thing if you really want to think how to attract Chinese. But it works for most countries as well. So visa is another issue. Okay.
Thank you so much. I think another point that has been emphasized, and I think it's the minister from Gambia spoke about, just put the context, is it's not just China actually who's investing in Africa. There are many other investors in Africa. Yes, China's been very exemplary, but what we need to do is we need to ensure that we build similar and greater partnerships across the world. Because for Africa to thrive, it cannot just benefit from one, but has to benefit from many other partnerships. They say, there's an African idiom that says, if you want to go fast, you must go alone. But if you want to go far, we have to go together. So, gentlemen, Honorable Najib Balala, Honorable Son Excellence Siandou Fofana, Dr. Adam Wu, Mr. Kwakye Donkor, Mr. Pascal Belda, thank you so much for sharing your insights, and to everybody in the room for participating enthusiastically. An hour is not enough for any African conversations, because to start with, as Africans, we like to talk. And now when there's a topic at hand, we need even more time. We just talk without any topic. So thank you so much. Let's look forward to the next session. Thank you.